Great. Good. Looks like we have a pretty good crowd here. We're CRNAs and future CRNAs. We like to kick off on time. We'll go ahead and start things off. My name is Dr. John Welch. I'm the program director and associate clinical professor at The Ohio State University College of Nursing. I'll let my colleague, Dr. Moriber, say hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Morber. I'm the Assistant Program Director here at the College of Nursing for the Nurse Anesthesia program. Great to see everyone.
Yeah, great to have everybody. Welcome. We appreciate you joining us. Um, We'll go over the program today, but first, just another huge welcome. I know everybody's busy. It's a beautiful summer afternoon, Monday afternoon, tough to make it out of the hospital or away from your other responsibilities. So we appreciate you showing up. Um, we'll take a minute quick to just go over some housekeeping for the session. We'll talk a bit about our program and give some details. Our setup of our program is a little bit unique to others, and so we'll talk about what that looks like. We'll talk about what your clinical rotations might look like, our application process and the timeline for that. A few, bits of background about who we're really looking for, and then we'll save some time for some Q&A at the end. So if that sounds good, we'll go ahead and jump in. First and foremost, try to stay on mute until we get into the Q&A, and then when we do, we'll have the ability for you to raise your hand. It's just easier for us to manage, whose hands were up first. If you're in a place that you're comfortable with it, we'd love for you to turn your camera on so we can see you. It's nice to see who we're talking to. If your full name isn't in on Zoom, go ahead and do that for us. So if you're logged in as iPhone or just a first name, there's some directions here how to do that. This helps us follow up with you. If you had particular questions, if there are questions in the chat that we weren't able to answer, and just gives our recruiting team the opportunity to reach back out to you to give you information. So how to do that is here. Also, a reminder that this session is for potential applicants for the nurse anesthesia program at Ohio State. If you're part of the media or a manager or a recruiter or some other person who's not a potential candidate, we kindly ask you to log off. Thanks for joining us, but that information can be gained other ways. This is really supposed to be a good spot, a good space for potential future students. And also, we will record the session and post that for folks who weren't able to make it or if you wanted to review it again. And so, by being here with us, you're consenting to us recording you. So, we appreciate that. Like I said, if you can rename yourself, that would be really helpful for our enrollment team to follow up with you. And how to do so is right here. With that, let's jump in. So first, I want to introduce you to our great team. We feel really fortunate to have a group of currently 5 dedicated nurse anesthesia faculty. We're all practicing nurse anesthetists as well, which is really fun and exciting because what we're teaching you, we're also employing in the operating room every day. So as I said, I'm the director. My background in anesthesia is pediatric anesthesia, mostly pediatric cardiac anesthesia. I practice at Boston Children's Hospital and also obviously am the director of the program. Those roles are not good for my carbon footprint, but we're going to leave that behind for now. A lot of back and forth between Boston and Columbus, but I love it and really fortunate to do that. Also have a strong background in global health, so spend a bit of time overseas as well. I'll let Dr. Morber give you a little bit of her background.
Oh, again, hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Morber. I have been around the block as a nurse anesthetist for a relatively long time, going on my 37th year as a CRNA, not counting the years in my program way back when, probably before most of you were even born. Um, I have been involved in nurse anesthesia education now for 30 years. I served as the program director for nurse anesthesia program in Connecticut, where I currently live and practice as a CRNA. Currently, I do mostly neuro anesthesia, a lot of spine cases, and I leave the pediatric hearts to Dr. Welch. Um, it's a pleasure to see everyone, and please ask any questions you might have during the Q&A.
Thanks, Dr. Morber. And, we're really fortunate for all of Dr. Morber's experience, both in practice as well as long-term experience leading anesthesia programs, and is, well respected as an author and a provider and an educator. So amazing to have her. We also, as you can see on this slide, have Dr. Kathy Petrowski. She also has a lot of experience running nurse anesthesia programs. She's opened a couple around the country. Was also most recently before she joined our team, the chief CRNA at Ohio State's Wexner Medical Center. So also has a lot of experience in, hospital executive leadership and anesthesia leadership as well. And she is also still practicing, doing a lot of outpatient anesthesia. We also are excited to have Dr. Tina Dalzell. She is both a practicing CRNA over at Wexner Medical Center at Ohio State. Does a big variety, a fair bit of neuro, also a lot of OB. And so it's awesome to have her. She teaches our OB for us as well. And she serves as our faculty clinical coordinator. So other than teaching, she also is really in charge of making sure the students get all of the cases and the skills and the experiences that they need. She is the first sort of liaison between our program and all of our clinical sites, and does an awesome job at that. And then finally, Dr. Nate Sellers. He is our faculty simulation coordinator. So his primary responsibility is getting all of our sims in order, and that's a huge job, a lot of work to make sure people have the experiences that they need in the sim lab. He also teaches a couple of our courses, our science, our Foundation of Science course, and some of our principles of anesthesia. And he's also the cardiothoracic anesthesia service line manager up at ProMedica Toledo Hospital in Toledo. So he also is giving cardiothoracic anesthesia a couple days a week as well. So really fantastic sort of group of faculty. And this is just the nurse anesthesia faculty. Of course, we are in the DNP program at Ohio State. So you have access to tons of professors teaching in the DNP courses as well. Those would be far too many to name, but a lot of great faculty. That's your team. Will be your teachers. What we're trying to do at Ohio State is no small task. We want to develop bold, skilled, and compassionate clinicians. I think sometimes it's easy in nurse anesthesia to decide that you're going to hide behind the drape, if you will. But we think one of the most important things about being a CRNA is that you're also still a nurse, and nurses bring that compassion to the table. We want to deliver exceptional anesthesia care across every single setting for every patient at every stage of life. In order to do that, we've got to teach you that. And so having faculty who live and work and practice in all of those spaces, all the way from neonatal and obstetric anesthesia up to end-of-life care, is really awesome for us to have that experience. We think it's important that your program is very academically rigorous. And so, we ask a lot from our students in terms of academic rigor, but also that your clinical care is both excellent and ethical, and that wherever we are, whatever we're doing, that we're sort of centering around human focus and taking care of people, both in the way that we practice and the way that we educate. And it's important for us to continue to foster a culture of curiosity, humility, and collaboration. And you'll find that that's really important for you to be successful in your careers. Anything, Dr. Morber, you want to add about our mission?
I think you hit all the important points, Dr. Welch.
Thank you. Um, and just, I'll take you on a photo tour as we go along. So this is um, our 2027 cohort. So they'll be graduating next year. Um, Sort of being quizzed by Dr. Dalzell in the sim lab at Ohio State. Fun stuff. So a little bit about our program, how we're set up, how things run. We're 36 months full time. That's 3 years full time. And we like to think of the program as hybrid. And that's because you spend a lot of time in the didactic setting in a virtual classroom. That doesn't mean you're by yourself learning on your own. You're in a virtual classroom in synchronous sessions multiple times a week. And in fact, our students find, even at a distance, find incredible ways to get together and be sure they're all supporting each other. Um, of course, uh, anesthesia is not a spectator sport, right? You've got to be there to plant a garden. So um, eventually, we do get together multiple times throughout the year, and when your clinical rotations begin, which we'll talk about in a moment, you will obviously be in person in the operating room. We are the nurse anesthesia track, and our students are mostly BSN to DNP students. We do have some who have master's degrees who go on to get a DNP. The one thing I'll say, um, as a piece of advice, if you're about to finish a DNP, pause. We're not currently able to give a second DNP, right? And we are a DNP degree, not a DNAP. And so that means that if you already are about to get a DNP, that we wouldn't be able to give you another one. Or let me put it this way, you wouldn't be able to earn another one. So I encourage folks who really want to become nurse anesthetists, who are looking at DNP programs, to just take a pause and maybe reach out individually about your circumstances. We hope in the future to have a post DNP certificate for people who already have a DNP who want to become CRNAs, but that at Ohio State just doesn't exist at the moment. We currently have 3 cohorts, so we're a relatively new program. Our first cohort is our class of 27, so that first class will graduate next August. They are 15 students who you see in this photo, and where they're at, they're currently in their 3rd semester of clinicals, their 6th semester overall. Um, and most of them are now starting to work into their specialty clinical rotations. So over the next year, they're going to be doing things like cardiac anesthesia and obstetric anesthesia and pediatrics, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where they're at. Our second cohort, class of 28, is 17 students, and they are just spending the summer gearing up for their first clinical rotations, which will begin in August. We spend the entire summer preparing them for that. And part of their coursework this summer is a preclinical anesthesia skills and anesthesia skills course that they take. So they'll kick off in clinicals in August. And then our third cohort is our class of 29. They're going to join us in August, and they are 20 students. What you're seeing is a slow trend of increasing our class size. We're going to hang out at 20 students for the next couple of cohorts. So for those of you thinking about applying for our 2030 cohort, we'll have 20 seats available. So let's just take a look at the curriculum plan. This is a very busy slide. Don't worry, I've broken it down on subsequent slides. But what I want you to see here is how much work this is. All right, so I want you to know what you're getting into. Any anesthesia program in the whole entire country is going to be equally as jam-packed with really heavy curriculum. And it's fair to say that our anesthesia students probably take the biggest credit load of any program within the college. It's about 108 credits total. And I say about because there are some fine tweaks happening over the course of the next semester or so in the way some of these courses are delivered. But it'll be about 108 credits. The heaviest semesters you can see are in the first year. So each of those semesters are about 16 credits. And then slowly, as you move into clinical, you have fewer and fewer didactic credit hours. You start shifting to focusing on your DNP project and your final DNP work, as well as focusing, like I mentioned before, on those clinical specialty rotations. For you, you'd be looking at autumn year one in August of 2030 and finishing up in August of 2033. So sounds like a long way away, but at least for us, it'll be here before we know it. Dr. Morber, anything you want to add about the overall curriculum plan? I'll go into a bit of detail.
I think really important to, emphasize the rigor of this program, especially during the first year. Students are very heavily engaged in their didactic and academics. So in order to be successful, we highly recommend that students not be working during that period of time so that they can focus on their courses. So it really becomes extremely important to make sure that you are in a good place financially to handle 3 years without an income.
Yeah, very good advice. Once you move into your clinical rotations, then we do have a policy within the program that you need at least 10 hours of rests between any sort of clinical work. And so that's really hard to find if you're trying to work and go to clinical. Really, it's virtually impossible to do that. So really important that you plan ahead and think about what this could look like for you. And then just to point out, I wanted to put it on this slide before we move year by year, but you're looking at one full year of didactic, and these didactic semesters also have clinical simulation seminars, which we'll talk about here in a moment. And you move into the clinical space autumn year two. And so something to think about for those of you who might be thinking about the benefits of a hybrid program like ours is. Much of your time in your first year is spent learning online with requirements to come to campus each semester for at least 3 to 5 days in each block. Those are planned well ahead of time, so you can plan your travel and things like that. But usually, what we're looking for is students to be in Ohio by this summer of year one, because you'll move into the clinical setting year two, and all of our clinical sites are in Ohio. They're throughout different parts of Ohio, but in and around Ohio. So let's just quickly look year by year with a little bit more insight into when you might be here in person. So autumn year one, you can see the courses that you take there. The italicized courses are your anesthesia-specific coursework, and the rest is either graduate nursing courses or your DNP sort of evidence-based practice courses. You can see how they're kind of mixed together there. And the in-person requirement your first semester is that we have an orientation session in August, followed by a fun social event as well. If we're getting together, we like to address business and also have a bit of fun together as well. Spring year one, moving into health assessment. We have a new pharmacology course that is the second in a series of anesthesia-related pharm courses. This is when you move into your pathophysiology for anesthesia. and some of the practice foundations about what it means to give anesthesia. And we get together twice in this spring semester, one in March and one later in August for seminar slash simulation, starting to put those skills to work, starting to think through how all this stuff looks in the operating room. Summer of year one, and that's where our class of 28 is right now. It's a very, very busy, course-heavy summer. And summer semester is not the typical 15, 16 weeks, it's 12 weeks. And so this is a lot of work in getting ready for that clinical period to start. You can see an important class there is the Introduction to Clinical Anesthesia, and that all culminates in a seminar in August that leads into students heading to the operating room. So that's year one. Year two, you can see as the time goes on, those graduate nursing and even anesthesia courses peel back a little bit because this is when you start to move into the clinical setting. For autumn and spring, your clinical rotations, you can see nurse anesthesia clinical practice 1 and 2. Those are 3 days a week. So Monday and Tuesday, you're in class. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're in clinical. So you can imagine those are pretty busy weeks to be moving back and forth between didactic and clinical. We have another seminar in August. So one at the beginning of August, one at the end of August. So that's a busy month for us. In spring year two, we have a simulation in March. OSANA, which is our state association for nurse anesthetists. That conference happens typically in April, and it's something we really encourage our students to go to, but it's not required. That's what the asterisk means there. And then we have another simulation session later in May for spring year two. Once we get to summer of year two, you can see we've almost pulled back all of those DNP or graduate nursing courses, just informatics, and then a couple of DNP courses. That DNP systems application course, that's what we call an immersion course, where you're starting to really dig into and focus on what your DNP project will be. For those of you who aren't aware, to earn your DNP, you've got to do some type of evidence-based practice project or a quality improvement project, and you work really closely with the faculty on that. We help you through that entire process, and that will tend to be at one of the clinical sites that you're assigned. The other in-person option, summer year two, is to come back for orientation of the next class and be part of be part of welcoming the incoming cohort, but again, that's not required. And then finally, year three, really the entire focus is on your clinical work and your DNP project. During the autumn period is when you are really focused on honing in on what that project's going to be and implementing whatever the work's going to be. We had another simulation session in May. That shouldn't say May because May isn't in autumn. More like April, beginning of May, around that time frame, sometime in the late part of that semester. So apologies for that typo. Spring year three, this is when we try to wrap up the DNP project. The nice thing about this is that if there's a little bit of delay or if projects need a little bit more work, you still have your summer semester to finish that up, right? But really what we're looking for is those DNP projects to wrap up by that time. If that's the case, then students will defend their project in that spring of year three. And if they're able to defend and successfully, complete that DNP project, they can also attend the College of Nursing Convocation, which is sort of a pre-commencement acknowledgement of that DNP work. Finally, graduate in summer semester. We have a final professional seminar. We're getting you ready to take your boards. We're wrapping up your clinical work. We're making sure people have all the cases and skills that they need. We also are looking forward to a competitive sim game competition in August for our senior class, and then celebrating all of your hard work through through commencement and an anesthesia reception. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of what your 3 years in the program will look like. Always subject to change based on feedback and how we do. Uh, Anything about the overall curriculum plan you want to add, Dr. Moriber?
Again, Dr. Walsh, I think you hit all the key points. Just realize that it is incredibly rigorous. We are always revising courses based upon student feedback. So the curriculum as is may change slightly over the next year or two as we continue to refine the program.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think that's a good point, especially as a younger program, we're really open to feedback and making those changes as we need to. So we've been able to be really fluid and flexible, and that's exciting. It means our students have been part of building something as well. Um, just to talk a little bit more about those on-campus requirements, which were kind of peppered throughout the curriculum. But you can see here, what's that? 2, 4, 6, 8, about 8 times across the course of those 3 years do we bring students in for anywhere from 2 to 5 days to be on campus at the College of Nursing. We moved all of our simulation in the College of Nursing. We were for a little bit of time using the medical center's simulation space at Pryor Hall, for those of you who are familiar. But we've been able to build a really robust anesthesia simulation space at the College of Nursing, which is exciting. And like I said, there are other opportunities throughout the year that we get together, whether it's orientations, conferences. This year's double ANA conference is in Boston, and so we've got about 20 students joining us in Boston, where myself, Dr. Morber, and Dr. Dalzell are all speaking at that conference. So we try to stay really active in that space as well. So what I'm getting at is that though a lot of learning happens together online, we also spend a lot of time together at the College of Nursing and in other places. And when we're lucky, we also get a visit from Brutus Buckeye himself, as you can see in this photo. Other pictures you're looking at, some more simulation work in the top photo, and then Dr. Petrowski walking a couple students through spinal and epidural anesthetics as well there. So lots of skills-based work during those seminars. Everybody's curious about clinicals. It is an exciting part about any program. You'll have 6 clinical semesters, and in those 6 semesters, you'll have over 2,000 hours of anesthesia delivery, right? And this is where I think some of the terminology gets a little bit confused. Sometimes you hear about other anesthetic professions where there are, counting 10,000 hours or something like that. Those are typically in hospital hours. In nurse anesthesia education, we only count the hours that you're actually in contact with a patient, right? So if you imagine what that looks like, that's a lot more hours in the hospital than just 2,000. We have a number of specialty rotations: cardiac, neurosurgery, obstetrics, pediatrics, and regional anesthesia, as well as a rural health equity rotation. And we're excited about that. It's a big part of Ohio State's program. As a land-grant institution, we have a responsibility to not just Ohio State itself, but the whole state of Ohio. And there are plenty of rural places around the state that need great nurse anesthetists. And so we're continually trying to find those places and work with them so our students can have a rural health rotation. And in fact, that's the preference for some of our students, and they end up spending most of their time in the rural setting, and then intermittently having rotations at the big house at the University Wexner Medical Center. Um, our specific rotations are meant to allow the student to focus on those specialty areas, as well as to get the case numbers that they need. And so each of these happen at slightly different places, although every student will rotate through Nationwide Children's. So we've got a good agreement with them that everybody's PEDS rotations will happen over a 2-month rotation there. Otherwise, currently our clinical sites are University Medical Center, and that includes not just the main campus, but all of the different surgical centers, OSU Hospital East, and some of those places. ProMedica Toledo Hospital, which right now is their main campus, a big trauma center. They do a lot of hearts, really good site up there. And we'll be adding a couple of their smaller subsidiary hospitals as well. Nationwide Children's, as I mentioned, Adena Regional Medical Center in Chillicothe, not too far from Columbus. That is right now a site for our senior students to kind of hone their skills and start working more independently. Springfield Regional Medical Center in Springfield, a bit west of Columbus, another fantastic site. Really heavy CRNA practice there. They get a lot of regional anesthesia. We do hearts there. Really good stuff. Holzer Hospital down in Gallipolis is one of our rural sites, and that's a CRNA only practice. They don't currently have any anesthesiologists, so our students get to experience what it's like to work in a CRNA only practice. Again, all of the clinical skills that happen there are provided by a CRNA or one of our students. So that's a fantastic site for us. And then Southern Ohio Medical Center in Portsmouth, and that's another great SOMC. Fantastic clinical site, excellent preceptors there, really, really good opportunities. Coming soon, Lima St. Rita's. I say coming soon, we're finalizing contractual paperwork with these sites. I didn't add Southeastern Ohio Medical Center as well. Marietta Memorial Hospital and Boston Children's. That is a elective rotation for people who are interested in peds and might want to do some peds hearts with me. That is the goal for that site. So not required, don't worry. People are not going to have to pick up and move to Boston, but fun to have that as an option. So let's switch gears away from the program itself and a little bit into the application process and the timeline. For those of you who have either looked at Ohio State in the past or have maybe applied in the past, our timeline has changed quite a bit. Our applications will open this year, August 3rd, and that application window is only open for 6 weeks. So those applications will close September 16th. I strongly recommend that you go ahead and take a look at the website, nursing.osu.edu. You can find the nurse anesthesia website there and walk through what's required of the application. You can start working on this before the application opens. Okay. And so you've got much more time than just that 6 weeks. And also to say that we don't look at any applications until that application window closes. So does it benefit you to apply first? Not really. But does it benefit you to make sure that you've got that application in by the time they close at 5 p.m. on September 16th? Absolutely, because we can't accept a late application. We will invite folks for a second interview. So we call it a second interview. Something that's a little bit unique to Ohio State is a process that we have called HireView. This is a recorded interview that every single applicant provides. You get somewhere around 4 to 5 prompts, And after a minute or so with that prompt, the recording begins and you can answer the prompt. You get a couple of minutes to just share your responses about those questions. Of course, the questions are not posted anywhere and they do change. So those of you who've either done it before or found the questions posted somewhere online, they will change this year. And this is just our first opportunity to really get to know a little bit more about you. I really encourage you, anytime you're applying to any program, but especially a nurse anesthesia program, get really clear about what you're here for. Why are you doing this? What's interesting to you about becoming a CRNA? And be able to share that. And that will prepare you well for that interview. After those are complete, and that's part of this 6-week window from August 3rd to September 16th is that hire view process. Okay. After that, our admissions committee, who was that team that you saw on the previous slide. So this is our applications committee. So this will be who reviews all of your applications, the 5 nurse anesthesia faculty. Then we will invite folks to a second round interview. This is a one-on-one interview over Zoom. Well, I shouldn't say one-on-one. It's 5-on-1 interview. So the application committee will then interview you over Zoom. Those invitations go out over the course of that week, October 8th through 15th. Those interviews are for 30 minutes on Zoom. And mark your calendars now, especially if you feel good about getting in. The interviews are scheduled for October 22nd, 23rd, 29th, and 30th. And again, those happen over Zoom. You'll be notified by October 15th at the latest. Early November, we will post admissions decisions. Why do we not put exact dates? We do have the exact dates in mind, but one of the things that happens is that folks can be waitlisted, and that waitlist is constantly moving around. And so, if you interviewed and you were put on the waitlist, we'll have a cohort finalized by May of 2027. So that can sometimes be confusing for folks. Just want you to know early November, the decisions are posted, including waitlists and denials. And so if you're waitlisted, the kind of final cutoff to be invited is May of 27. And then you've got the summer to get your ducks in a row and join us at the end of August in 2027 for your on-campus orientation. Couple more slides here, and then we'll open it up for questions. Always a question is tuition, scholarship, and financial aid. These are the most recent numbers that we have, and these numbers change all the time. So I just want you to know that this is an estimated number. And our best advice, start saving now. Much more information is available at these 2 websites. Unfortunately, as program faculty, we are not the financial aid experts. This is a really complicated space and it's changing all the time. And so our best advice is to save now, to start looking into potential scholarship opportunities you might have. We do have a couple of scholarship opportunities within the program itself. A couple of generous donors who've given to scholarship. But those aren't awarded until later in the program. There are other opportunities outside of those program-specific scholarships that are available. And so take a look at Scholarship Universe. That's a really good resource. And then other questions around financial aid is sfa.osu.edu. Keep in mind that Scholarship Universe one is osu.scholarshipuniverse.com. That takes you outside of the OSU realm. So anyway, something to keep in mind there. And to note, these numbers don't include travel and room and board for seminars, right? So if you are joining us from out of state and you're going to travel for some of those seminars, you've got to keep that in mind. A lot of students end up, crashing with a classmate, or maybe they have family in Ohio, some link to Ohio. So there are ways to save there. But if you plan to live outside of Ohio, up until you come into the clinicals, the clinical rotations, there might be some added costs around that place, or around that travel as well. What are our admission criteria? They're not very different from most other programs. You won't be surprised. You've got to have a bachelor's or a master of science in nursing. This is where things get a little tricky. A minimum of 1 year recent ICU experience. We say recent, and that's within 2 years, right? We have a number of folks who maybe did a year in the ICU and now have been working some outpatient setting or whatever. We want recent within 2 years experience as a critical care nurse. If you're looking for the definition of a critical care nurse, we do have it listed on our website under our frequently asked questions. You can also turn to COA, CRNA.org. Excuse me, that is our accreditors, the accrediting body for nurse anesthesia programs. And they are the ones who define what critical care is, not us. And so we're looking for at least 1 year, but I will say that our applicant pool is pretty competitive. And most of so just before this meeting, I was looking at our class of 29, the most recent incoming cohort. The least experience is 2 years, and the most experience is 8 years. And so you can see this range of years of experience. People ask very frequently, I will have a year of experience by the time the program starts. We're looking for a year of experience, at least by the time you apply. Okay. Other things. For the College of Nursing, a minimum of a 3.0 GPA on a 4.0 scale. And it's likely that if your GPA is under a 3.3, that's probably not competitive with the rest of the applicant pool. Hold that thought for a second. Also, this is new this year. So those of you who have looked in the past or who are reapplying, we have removed the statistics requirement. That's no longer a requirement for application. But we do now require a science GPA of at least a 3.2 with a course in biology, chemistry, and microbiology. For biology, anatomy and physiology does count. For chemistry, it can be a basic chemistry course, general chemistry course, an organic chemistry course, a biochemistry course, but it needs to be a chemistry course of some description, and then a microbiology course. And those are not uncommon requirements for many programs. We have always looked at a science GPA. The applicant pool has become competitive enough that we're now requiring that. The way that works in the application process is you'll submit your entire application, and then after that, you'll get a form to fill out to include all of your biology, all of your chemistry, and all of your microbiology courses. That will calculate for us a cumulative science GPA. And then we'll also ask you to select the science courses that you've had the best scores in. And so we'll see your top science scores and your cumulative science scores. And that will start to give us a picture of your science background. Now, I also mentioned to put a pin in this idea of a minimum GPA because the College of Nursing still has what we call a holistic applications process. And I don't want to read all of this to you, but things that we're also looking for outside of just these numbers experience with relevant populations of your chosen specialty, experience with things like evidence-based practice or quality improvement, innovation and scholarship, evidence of resiliency and the ability to overcome obstacles, to think critically, and evidence of growth. So what that means is, you know what? We were all teenagers and undergrad once, right? Maybe we weren't all the most focused at that time, but if you can demonstrate to us that you've had academic growth, right? That you can achieve academically and describe that to us, show us what that looks like in your academic journey, then we'll still consider you, right? We've made allowance for that because we know people grow over time. We're also looking for people who are engaged in their community, anything from local community engagement to global engagement. Do you have diversity of thought? Do you have different perspectives and experiences that may not be the same as everybody who just checks all the boxes, got good grades, worked in the ICU, and now they're coming to anesthesia school? We look for that really engaged individual. That also means people who are really active on your units, right? So join an evidence-based practice council or your unit leadership committee, volunteer for things, do something a little bit bigger than just showing up to work each day. And overall, your commitment to the profession, right? Like I said, at the end of the day, we're all nurses, and so we're looking for that too. And that also means that we're looking for you to communicate this stuff with us. So if you're doing these things, don't let us guess, right? Share your holistic experiences with us. And finally, who are we looking for? People who've answered their calling to care, right? That's what we're committed to at the College of Nursing. And so folks who are not just qualified, but called to this specialty. What does that look like? People ask all the time, what does this look like? Well, people who are humble enough to listen and to learn, hungry enough to put in the hard work, curious enough to keep us on our toes, right? That means asking those tough questions, and committed enough to go beyond just checking the boxes. So, like I mentioned, we like to attend conferences together. So this is most of our first two cohorts at the Ohio Association of Nurse Anesthetists conference that was in, I think, late March there in Columbus. Some more pictures from simulation. We're always glad when we get invited to the SHU. Wexner Medical Center often sponsors a nice reception in August for all different programs, and that's super fun. So like I said, we also have a lot of fun together. You can see a picture here of one of our students, Calvin, in the bottom left there. He was interested in that team up north, but we convinced him to become a Buckeye. And so here's Calvin meeting Brutus for the first time. And then another one of our students, we employ a lot of VR in our first year of the program before students are in the operating room to help them really get a sense of what it looks like to be there. So a couple more pictures for you there. With that, let's pause for questions. So what we'll do, you can put questions in the Q&A. I'll take a look and try to monitor those and answer them as I'm able. So let me open that up. And in the meantime, if somebody puts a question in the chat that you are interested in, you can just like that or upvote that. Otherwise, you can find the raise hand function down at the bottom under reactions. It says react. I think there's a heart. And if you click on that, I'll just take questions in order that they come. Quiet bunch. Oh, here we go. Hang on one second. Um, there we go. Okay, up first, and I apologize with pronunciations, but Oluwafunmi, go
That was
ahead.
perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Walsh. Also, just wanted to thank you for your time this evening. One of the questions that I had is how have students been able to support each other, especially with it being the first 2 years are pretty much remote with the occasional seminars. And then we have that third year where clinicals are gearing up. How have you seen students find success in that community?
Awesome question. The first is that we've created a pretty robust peer mentoring program. And so, pretty much from the moment students are invited to join OSU, they're connected with one of the upperclassmates, and that mentoring process begins. I've been told because I stay outside of that, that's for peer mentoring. But I've been told that, our cohort that's coming in 2029 or will graduate in 2029, who's starting in August, that they've already had a group chat since, like February and have even some of them gotten together already. So I think that's really important, the student level support. And then we really do capitalize on our time together. So when we bring students together, um, we share lunch together. We have social events after that. We try to spend time collectively as a group so that we're more than just, small faces on a Zoom channel. Um, that being said, we also are pretty OSU is really good at the distance education because it's synchronous, right? We're together live in person. Um, for those of you with your cameras off, we do make you turn your camera on. It's part of the agreement, and so we do end up having a lot of a lot of time together. And then finally, I'll say as faculty, we're quite available. I think you'll find that once you're into the program, we're here to answer questions, here to engage. Um, Students call, text, email all the time. I had a student last week who he started his rotation at Nationwide Children's, and he was going to go into the cath lab. And so we spent like an hour and a half walking through the patient's anatomy, how to do the case, because that's the world that I live in. So and all of our faculty are sort of the same. We love that, and we've got a good culture of connection. So excellent question. Thank you. Um,
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. I think Nick, you're up next. Unfortunately, I can't hear you, Nick. You might check next to the mic, the audio, click the arrow, and just make sure you've chosen the right mic on your computer.
Can you hear me now?
Gotcha. Perfect.
All right, perfect. So one of them's more a clarification. If we're applying this August, would we not start classes until 2030, or would we be starting next year?
Um, you would, let's see. No, no, no. You would start classes in this is 26. You would
So
start
if we
classes.
apply this August, would we
Yeah, you
start
would start
in
in 27.
2027? Okay.
Yeah, you know what? I was going forward from our class of 29. That's a good call out. Good job on the math there, Nick. So yeah, you
Okay.
would be starting in 27 and graduating by 2030. Yes.
All
Good
right.
call out.
And then my other question was with Ohio State having also a medical school, how much competition is there with us CRNA students and the medical students getting cases in any of the various specialties?
So there's no competition with the medical students because they don't really do anesthesia. So what's interesting, in fact, is that they do an anesthesia rotation as medical students. And a lot of times it might be one of our CRNA students who is teaching that medical student because the residents are still learning. Maybe they're in a difficult case. So what I'm saying is there are opportunities for interprofessional education to happen, which is awesome. And then finally, if there is competition, it would be with anesthesiology residents, our physician colleagues who are in their residencies at Ohio State. That being said, OSU is a massive place. Any given day, there's close to 100 anesthetizing locations throughout the whole enterprise, if you will. And so our students will always be working with a CRNA. At Wexner, CRNAs do every type of case. So we've got students on their, cardiac rotation doing open heart cases with CRNAs, one-on-one, not in competition with a resident. Same with big neuro cases, same with obstetric cases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's plenty of cases to go around. And it's also one of the benefits of having some of those rural rotations that we offer where it's only a CRNA practice. And so they don't have any other learners at all. So huge opportunity and one that we pay attention to. Being very sure students get the case numbers that they need. But the anesthesia leadership from the chief CRNA all the way up to the leadership at Wexner Medical Center is very supportive of our program and students getting the experiences that they need. So, good question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll quickly answer. There's a question in the chat about CCRN. No, we don't require the CCRN, but wouldn't it make you a better candidate to have it? There are certain things in my mind, just as a CRNA and as a program director, that you can be explicit and say you require it, but it's also a thing that will set you apart from other people, right? And you don't want to be in the balance of, if I just had my CCRN, I would have gotten in, right? You want to do all of those things, right? And it's easy enough for us to say, oh yeah, do all of this stuff. But also there's some unwritten things that we're always just looking for, right? There's another question about how often are clinicals. Clinicals are every week. For your first 2 semesters, it's 3 days a week. And for your final 4 semesters, it's 4 or 5 days a week. Some of those are off shifts. So you might be doing an overnight shift on OB call, or you might be taking a trauma call, right? So you can get the experience of emergency cases, but you're in clinical all the time, 40 plus hours a week. And then maybe, Zainab, we can take your specific question about your volunteer experience offline. So feel free to shoot an email. Tabitha, go ahead.
Thank you so much for taking the time out today. I have 3 questions. I'll make them really quick. First one is, are retakes included in the GPAs? Like if you took a course 2 or 3 times, do you include that all attempts or just the best attempt?
We want to see everything, and you'll also submit your transcript so we can see everything, right? You want to address retakes somehow with us. So whether that's in your essay or, maybe in a recorded interview. When you're retaking a class, you also want to think about, is it meaningful to retake the same class 3 times? Or do you want to show some academic growth, right? And maybe taking a different but similar type of class, right? So that's this whole holistic idea, right? Is that we want to see academic improvement, and we recognize that that's very important for people. But tell your story too. We can't just pour over your transcripts for an hour per candidate and try to make up the story itself, right? So tell us, kind of your academic story. We'll take your questions and then we'll end with Deidre. So after Tabitha will take Diamond, and then Deidre.
And that kind of leads into my next question. Do you guys accept transfer graduate courses?
We can accept up to 10. No, sorry, that's wrong. You can take up to 10 graduate credits without being enrolled in a program at Ohio State. That's the graduate non-degree seeking. And then we can only evaluate your graduate credits after you're accepted into the program. So we do accept some. We can't tell you what they are until you're accepted, because what happens then is a course by course comparison of each syllabus. Those courses have to be at least 60% similar, and that is judged by 3 different faculty who make that call. We sort of take a vote. And I don't know exactly how many credit hours, but there is a limit as to how many you can transfer in as well. But we
Okay.
do accept them. Yeah.
Okay. And my last one, I'm sorry. Do you have like any students that you know of that make a commute of like an hour or two away? And do you like what is your feedback on that?
Your time is your own, you know. We have clinical sites really kind of all over the state, apart from the Cleveland area. You know, they've got 2 great programs up there, and those places have you know the students that they need. When it comes to when it comes to commute, your time is your own. We do work very hard to help find. So, for example, away rotations down in Gallipolis. That's, you know, almost 3 hours from Columbus. We have housing options for the moment for our students who go there. We can't guarantee it. It may not always be there, right? But we do try to work with people. So, for example, I have a student right now who lives in the Detroit area. We're able to work closely with him that a lot of his clinical work is in Toledo, right? It's a 45-minute commute for him. But he does have to come to, has to come to Columbus, because everybody gets the opportunity to rotate through Wexner Medical Center. Everybody's got to go to Nationwide. And so some people find a place to stay, other people make the commute. That's your decision, you know. So
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
you're welcome. Diamond, go ahead.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
I can. Yep.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for answering my question. You actually kind of Tabitha's question kind of had a lot to do with my question, and then you gave the story of the gentleman that's from Detroit
Hmm.
area, because that really was my question, asking like if you are coming from Michigan, more specifically the Detroit area, would you guys actually give more priority clinicals to like being closer because they're from Michigan, kind of like making that commute. I do understand of making the commute to Columbus when needed, when have to, and especially in your last year, just because you never know where your clinical sites are. But that was kind of my question, just kind of asking. That was one of them.
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, we can't promise anybody anything,
Right.
because our number one goal is for you to get the clinical experiences that you need, the case numbers that you need, the skills that you need to graduate, and to graduate on time. Um, that being said, as a program, you know, we do try to work with people to understand what those living situation needs are. That being said, you know, we are an OSU program. Our anchor is in Columbus. And so, you know, there will be needs to commute and to travel. But, you know, we do have clinical opportunities in Northwest Ohio, right? So it's just, and the student that I was mentioning spends plenty of time. He also did a rotation down in Southern Ohio as well, right? So a few hours away from Detroit. So
Yeah.
everybody goes kind of everywhere, but we do work with students to understand what those housing needs might be.
Okay, thank you. I understand the commuting back and forth to Ohio because I graduated in Huber Heights, Ohio, and I'm from Detroit. So
Okay.
I did the 3.5 hour drive for a year. I
Wow.
understand the commute.
Yeah.
But
Thanks,
yeah,
Diamond.
that was my question. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We'll take Deidre's question, and then out of the interest of time, we'll leave it there. Go ahead, Deidre.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, I apologize because I'm driving. I had a prior commitment, but I still wanted to try and get my question in. I just had a couple questions. I was just wondering, how many applications you typically see a year. I was also going to ask about like the retakes and stuff, but other people answer that, so that helped pretty well.
Good. Um, we have seen an increasing number of applications each year. And last year we saw a bit over 200 applications with 20 seats. Um, Based on things like interest in this information session and just the outreach, I think that we'll be well over that 200 applications this year. So we get a lot.
Thank you. And then I did have like two more kind of quick questions. I know you mentioned like the CCRN is not required. I was just wondering if you see like in your accepted students, would you say that most of them have their CCRN or some type of certification? And then my last question was, I know like school is very challenging and there's not much space for like extracurricular activities or anything like that. I was kind of just wondering like if you were just have to have a life circumstance come up, like how generous are you guys with like giving a couple days and having you make that up? Like not saying it's gonna be like weeks on end, obviously, but is there leniency for having like things happen that you didn't expect like outside of school wise? And like, is there a way to make that up if that were to happen?
Yeah, so I already forget the first question you asked. Oh, CCRN. Yeah, people have it. You should get it. We're not requiring it, but it has been the difference for some candidates before, right? Between if everybody's exactly the same if you've got two people exactly same on paper and one has taken that extra step to study for and obtain their CCRN and one person hasn't, that can be the deciding factor. Same as two excellent ICU nurses, but one has taken the time and effort to be part of their unit leadership council. Those things are really important, you know. And those are the things that we look at as part of the holistic process. So things to keep in mind. Um, these programs are very rigorous. And so one of the things we encourage people to do as they apply is to have conversations with your family, with your friends, to say, this is really important to me. This is going to take a lot of my time and effort. You know, I may not be able to go out for, our cousin Jimmy's birthday on a on a Sunday night, right? Um, and figure out as you start to apply how you can carve out time for family, carve out time for friends, and start setting those expectations now. That being said, things do come up. Um, we, follow the standard academic policies for the first year, which is, students work with their professors if they have to miss class. When it comes to our seminars, for the most part, those are non-optional, right? Those are planned well in advance. And so students should plan well in advance to be there. And then when it comes to your clinical rotations, so we give the standard university holidays, students get those off. That being said, the academic calendar may not follow exactly. So, if classes end, let's say December 5th, clinicals might not end until December 20th, for example. So you're still going to clinical because we know it's really important for you to keep at the operating room and stay there. And it's important for our clinical partners. That being said, our policy at the moment is students in those 2 years of clinical have 15 days to use for what they need to use, right? So if there's something that comes up, doctor's appointment, your friend's getting married, whatever, those days are there for you to use. Anything beyond that becomes an individual circumstance where we have to have a conversation about a leave of absence, and taking a pause from the program and maybe coming back another time. And you would find that, I think, in most programs, because our goal is keep you in the OR, getting your reps in, make sure you're attending class, and doing what you need to do.
Perfect. That sounds awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I put this slide back up so you've got the email. So the best place to reach out for questions is online enrollment at osu.edu. They know how to connect you with me if there's questions that they can't answer, but they know a lot and do a lot of student interaction and outreach. So if you've got additional questions, try them first. They'll probably answer it much more quickly than I can. In the meantime, it was awesome to see so many of you. Thanks for those of you who stuck it out. Thanks to those of you who were able to come on camera. It's nice to see some faces. Good luck with everything, and I look forward to seeing applications. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.